Quick story I wanted to do before we went to break. Remember when we had Seth Mnookin on the show and he talked about this MMR vaccine hoax where a study had been done by Dr. Andrew Wakefield, a gastroenterologist, and he was giving the idea that there may be a link between autism in children and getting the MMR vaccine. Of course, the study was a complete hoax. There was no link, at least in those children in that study. It doesn't completely rule out the possibility of it existing, but again, there is no evidence to suggest that it does. You remember this story?
I remember, yes.
Now,
I remember you defending the fact that it was a hoax, like very passionately.
Defending the fact that it was a hoax. In other words, I was agreeing it's a hoax.
I think you said it was definitely a hoax.
Right, yeah, and we talked to Seth and we heard all about it. And again, that particular study was a hoax. Well, the lack of, or in other words, there have been some anti-vaccination groups that have cropped up. And in California, it has actually led to the worst whooping cough outbreak in more than 50 years. It's killed 10 infants. It's reported in 6,400 cases. And in part, it's due to this lack of vaccination that some parents are choosing to do. Now, where are we going with this? What's the news on this? The news is that now there is a proposal to slash millions of dollars in federal funding for vaccination immunization programs. Republicans in Congress have proposed it. The House GOP's 2011 budget would chop about $150 million from the CDC's funding for immunization and respiratory diseases. The reductions are likely to hit the CDC's support for state and local programs, the agency's ability to evaluate which vaccines are working, and its work to educate the public about vaccine recommendations for children are all on the chopping block here. Okay, and Dr. George Benjamin, who's the executive director of the American Public Health Association, says when there's less money, fewer kids get vaccinated. It's very simple. Children of the working poor who don't qualify for Medicaid are going to be particularly exposed here. They're going to have a hard time getting vaccinated against measles or the flu. And many groups actually want that. In other words, there are many anti-vaccination groups who want less vaccination for children, even if it does lead to whooping cough and 10 infants in California dying from something that nobody should be dying from.
Right, but the groups want less vaccinations for children because they believe vaccinations can be harmful, right?
They believe a whole number of things, including that. Yes.
I mean, it's not really a financial thing.
No,
I mean,
no.
why is the GOP trying to implement this?
Well, the GOP is cutting things from all the wrong places, as we know. And
I mean, so this has nothing to do with their social agenda.
I am not saying that the GOP is littered with these anti-vaccination conspiracy theorists. Absolutely. No, this is just one of those areas that the GOP says, well...
Plain and simple, just a poor place to try and cut spending.
Exactly. Instead of, let's close some army bases in Germany.
And they just happen to have all these groups backing them.
Well, it is two separate things. I'm kind of putting it in context here for our audience. Behind the scenes, you know what? I should have researched. Are some of the individuals who are proposing cutting this funding funded by any of these lobbies that are really out there to cast doubt and scare parents about vaccinations? It's a good question. I haven't looked into it. I'd be curious what the results were.
We should look into that.
But the point here, ladies and gentlemen, is number one, more cutting in all the wrong places. And number two, conspiracy theories and this constant double standard, or rather, double standard or inconsistent standard for conspiracy theories and proving versus having to positively disprove them.
The cutting the Democrats wants to do, I mean, we haven't seen many better ideas coming from the other side either.
No,
all around it's pretty bad.
The cutting that is being proposed, it's not so much that it is bad in many cases, but the fact that on the whole, both sides are completely bought by the interests that make them keep the bases open, keep the money flowing from corporate interests, we've said it over and over again. Let's go to break, and we'll come back and talk about something else before we get Lewis wound up again, as he always does with this. Visit us on Facebook, facebook.com/David Pakman Show. Back in a few with more.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.